Welcome to the Healing Trauma Through Conscious Embodiment Summit, revealing your body's wisdom and utilizing creativity in healing. My name is Gregg Westwood, and I'm your host. My work is called Depth Integration, where I use meditation, breath work, inquiry, journey work, and movement as conscious embodiment tools for healing. The purpose of this summit is to support participants who are interested in that deeper and longer lasting healing that conscious embodiment tools support by revealing their body's wisdom and utilizing creativity and imagination in healing. My intention is to motivate, educate, and inspire all of us in taking empowered steps along our healing journeys. Today I have Andrea Juhan. Her work is called Living an Embodied Life. And her presentation tonight is the promise of embodied movement practice, developing resources for sustained resiliency. Welcome so much, Andrea.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about how you developed your work and your embodiment practice.
Right. Well, I've come about the work that I do from many different strands, from body work, from psychotherapy, from dance, and from yoga, which for me, they're all blended into one. Now, finally, decades later, finally, I can say that they are all the same thing. But for this presentation, kind of what I thought of is the promise of a movement practice to create a base for us as humans to be creative, to be vital, to be alive, to be relational, something not to replace therapy, but something that is kind of a part of life, like yoga classes are a part of life that support all sorts of good growth. So the conscious movement dance practice that I teach these days is called Open Floor. I was with the 5 Rhythms for over 30 years. And before that, I mean, I've just studied a lot of things, but I've been doing it a long time.
That's great.
And at Open Floor, what we do is we have looked, a lot of really senior teachers have looked at what are the key fundamental movement resources that all bodies need to learn to be optimized, to be balanced, stable, resilient, creative, intuitive, a little less accident prone, safe, strong, all of these good things that we want when we're embodied. And we came up with 10, there's more, but 10 core movement resources that we find that when you practice those movement resources on a regular basis, you're going to have sustained physical intelligence and you call it like mastery of your body, where you are in space, how to be grounded, how to move forward, how to move back, these kinds of things that we're quickly losing being on the screen so much. Although screen and embodiment, we can talk about that in a little bit as well, because I think that's really changing since the pandemic. So where was I? Oh, the 10 movement principles. So we have in the tradition of conscious dance practice, which now we can say has a tradition, our community of teachers offer classes weekly, monthly, daily, short, intensive programs, long, ongoing. And there's a way that communities are built up, communities of practice that support not only physical mastery, but emotional intelligence, as well as mindfulness, as well as a spiritual or like a soul unfolding kind of capacity. And having a community of people who have a like language is incredibly and profoundly supportive. When we know that life is going to knock us off time and time again, trauma is a fact. Trauma is a fact of life. If you have a body, there's going to be times whether you experience, big T or little t or anything on that continuum, all of the developmental traumas. So because I'm a psychotherapist as well as a mover and a dancer, I've been really just super enthusiastic about what dance practice brings to our mental health, to our mental health, and particularly around trauma, because trauma is such a place where we lose our abilities. We lose our capacity, we lose our self-confidence, we lose our ability to be in a relationship. So anything that has kind of a way of supporting unwinding trauma, recalibrating the body from trauma, I could speak more about that, to me is super exciting, particularly when it's not going to be, it's not to replace therapy, individual therapy, but individual therapy is super expensive for so many people. It's not accessible.
Right.
Whereas practice, communities of practice can be held ongoing at much lesser cost, can be inclusive, I think. Again, things we're developing as a field, more inclusive than perhaps just individual therapy. So that's what I would say to start.
Right. Well, and the relationships are so important, and being seen by others, and how do you use the movement? I think safety is a big issue with trauma. How does the movement help?
Yeah. That's actually one of the key points where I think the movement classes support moving through trauma in a way that is kind of an addition to individual therapy, because you're in a community of others, you're relating to others, you're doing mindful movement practice in dyads and trios again and again through life, through the winter, through the spring, through Christmas time, through the death of a community member, so you start to see all the different moods each other has and the different textures and qualities of all our, self states. And I think that in that we can learn that life isn't going to be perfectly safe, but it can be safe enough. And that with the embodied resources, we can find enough of a comfort zone that we can start to take some of the risks. We can start to take, some of those risks to move out of the trauma circle that might have taken us inward, shut down, into kind of expanding out, finding our creative voice, saying that we like somebody, just the simple things that feel so scary when you don't feel resourced. So I think there's something about learning how to feel safe in an environment that is not quite so safe.
Right.
And learning that you can do that. That's one of our maturation skills too. Developmentally, we need to do that. Yeah. We need to learn that.
Definitely.
Mm.
The other thought I had was, what's great about movement therapy is that it helps the participants complete a sequence of movement that was shut down. Mm-hmm. Do you want to say anything?
Right. Well, for sure, all of the primary emotions, if thwarted or unsupported or dealt with in a way that was traumatic, like you would be punished for them, do need to finish, right? They need to finish that gestalt. And, I speak a lot in gestalt language, that ability to follow a gestalt all the way to its completion with witnessing, not alone, but really to be in company, good, solid, intelligent company of others is super important, and happens on the dance floor all the time without fanfare, really. Just like, this is normal, this is what we do. I need a good cry, or I'm super pissed off at something and I'm going, here's this song and I'm going to be pissed off about this. And okay, my body can come back. Often the dance practice allows us to complete these emotional cycles easier than other modalities because it doesn't have content, right? We can dance a really just super heartbreaking song, right? Music is such a beautiful therapist. Music just offers us, and you can it can touch some of those tender places inside that you might, and you're breathing, your body's open, that you might not be able to touch if it was in a conversation or something like that. And you can build up some confidence to feel it and go, that's a piece of me I need to follow. That's a piece of me I haven't touched for a while or ever. And I'm going to follow that. I'm just going to follow that. And you learn how to do that in certainly open floor practice. Yeah.
You also have a program called Therapy in Motion. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. For exactly what I'm talking about here is that there's so many ways that movement supports the therapeutic process. And in fact, when I said at the beginning, I've learned, I used to have my therapy practice, and then I would have my movement practice. I'd have my outfit for both, my office for both. And now I really put it together because I see that the movement language is very much our psychology. Everything that happens in our being has also a movement language. We might not be able to see it. It might be a very micro movement, or not sensed yet, that the feeling that's not known yet, but you can kind of sense, but it's all there. It is in movement. And so when people are processing, or I'm sitting with people or doing therapy, I see it as a dance. I see it and feel it. I feel its movement in my own body as a dance. It's a beautiful dance. Even the ugliest, most dark places become poetic in that way,
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, how does your work nurture creative self-expression?
Yeah. Yeah, we need that, huh? And it's so important. And what we have a lot of artists that come to our work for the practice, for the opening the body, so that they can feel that impulse, the creative impulse. We have a whole structure. We also have a program. We have therapy in motion, but we also have art in motion is another part,
Okay.
and we have embodied sexuality. Those are our three specialties. But in embodied art in motion, we really talk about creative intelligence. And how and what that is from a kinesthetic, emotional, muscular, fluid place that we need skill to access the muse, as it were, or the inspiration, or just the explosion of a good idea. We need skill to be able to nurture it and follow it through. And again, if we have these traumatic patterns and habitual shutdowns in our body, it's going to be really hard to follow those creative impulses. You can, pushing uphill. So many artists describe that feeling of like, oh, it's like, sweating blood or something. And not that we can change that, but I think we definitely can add a little bit of play, a little bit of play to the process that can help, really can help one's creative expression. And risk taking, again, that sense of being able to move into what's new or unknown with more confidence. Yeah.
That's great. So after somebody has this wonderful movement experience with you, then what do you, I think you on your website, you talk about, being willing to do something different when you, making embodiment, choices, your everyday commitment. Talk a little bit about that.
Boy, I know that so well from my own experience, right? I have all these great tools. I've studied a lifetime, and then I'm in the middle of something where I can feel an old pattern come. And there's that moment of interrupting the habitual, and just doing something different. And because I'm naturally kinesthetic and a dancer and have spent my life doing that, there's almost always some other avenue of movement in my body rather than I can just like do something stupid, even just like anything to break the pattern of going in that habitual way. I know my husband and I, we have little things that we do to each other if we feel one of those kind of relationship deadlocks coming of like, wait a minute, no, we have some other choices here. We have some other choices. We don't even know what they are, but if you can physiologically through the body just mess it up a little bit, new choices come along.
Yeah, that's so true, because if you're in a traumatic state, you don't feel like you have a choice.
No, and you pretty much don't when you're caught there, when you're in that black hole. You don't have a choice because your nervous system is not it's not functioning properly, right? It's, you're not playing with a full deck. We know that.
Right, right.
Mm. Yeah.
What else would you like to talk about this evening? What's coming up for you?
Well, you've mentioned, I think it's important. It's something I've been looking at lately, is a sense of safety, maturity, how to deal with trauma. I mean, I think there's a lot of emphasis on regression, going back into a trauma with
Right.
an educated other, with support, with resources. All of that I think is necessary. So I wouldn't, necessary. And I think that depending on the trauma, depending how long, depending on the person, depending on the culture and support, there's ways that key developmental phases have gotten missed. And it's not like I need to unwind the trauma. I need to go back and learn something that I never learned because of the trauma.
Okay.
I mean, the simplest example might be saying no, not people pleasing, like being able to tolerate the fact that I might disappoint you. And actually watching that dance. Oh boy, Gregg is disappointed with me. Oh, now I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that. And being able to just kind of rehearse that, practice that, feel that, get oneself accustomed. I mean, that's kind of a simple example, but just that sense of the things that a child would learn in a family that was supportive. Like in the terrible twos and terrible threes, when children are going through all sorts of things that are inconvenient for parents. And particularly parents who have been traumatized themselves don't have the bandwidth to actually, emotionally facilitate that learning. We can, if we've missed that, we can learn it, right? We do know the brain is we have plasticity. We can learn it, and in open floor movement practice, we really capitalize on that capacity, on the plasticity, and we can tell. You can see in the body, and you can see in somebody's emotional development that there are basic developmental skills that they've missed. They just don't know them. Even the skill of being loved, being able to receive love, trust that somebody else cares for you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge missing piece for so many people. And how do I learn to receive? How do I learn to receive? How do I even know that I'm not receiving? These kinds of things can be really addressed, again, without the content, without the, I'm not your mate. I'm not, there's not all this big content and consequence. I'm just somebody here dancing with you. Can you receive that, even that I'm looking at you, that I'm witnessing you, and what comes up, and how do you devalue, disassociate, dismiss my presence? For example, these kinds of things. I love it because it's so clear. It's so clear on the dance floor. And yet it's very complex psychological, emotional, spiritual practices that we're talking about. But it does become just tangible, because it's in the body and it's on the dance floor. We're with music, and you feel it, you touch it, you can really meet some experiences that in my life, I just don't know how I would have met if it wasn't on the dance floor. I don't know how I would have met them inside of myself. So I guess I wanted to add that.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. Coming home to the wisdom of the body, because the body doesn't lie.
Yeah.
The mind.
And we also really include mind as body, that thoughts are movement as well.
Right.
The mind, the head is a body part. We're very clear about that. The head is a body part, and that our thought process also have movement. We really work with that, different mind states, the movement of criticism, the movement of generosity, the movement of creative problem solving, the movement of rehashing, the movement of planning. All of those have a dance. And when you move them, again, without the content, but just the rhythm of those mind states, it really can free up the mind to do what it's best at, which is to imagine, to be creative, to be generous, to be brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Wow, I could talk to you forever.
Oh, I hope you do. I hope
Yeah.
you make contact with me again. I really like what, that you're doing this. I'm someone who will support embodiment in every way, and I love learning through many different disciplines. So I'm really thankful that you asked me to participate. I'm happy to meet you.
And I love how our pets like both joined us today. Greta's back here.
Our two little white beings. That's Felipe.
Felipe.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your presentation. So we'll have a link to your website so people can learn more about your work, and I think you've got a lot of great resources on there for people as well, and also how you are working virtually these days. I'm assuming there's some of that happening. It's a little bit more challenging for us movers, but yeah, we're working away, but doable.
It is doable.
Great. That's so great.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you very much. And I do hope we'll connect sometime in the near future. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll tune in to all the other experts and presenters here at the Healing Trauma Through Conscious Embodiment Summit. Thank you.